Hello traders and welcome back to another market update. My name is Nick. Today we're going to be taking a look at the currency market, looking for major levels, potential trade setups and concepts for you to watch in the currency market in the current time. We're going to be going ahead and starting out with some of our major currency pairs, which is going to be euro dollar, pound dollar, and USDJPY. Let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. We're taking a look at euro USD for starters, and what you can see here that is kind of interesting is notice more recently how price has been forming some sort of bullish response to the current level. You can see if I draw this trend line here, you can see we did kind of find a barrier for sellers, right? Sellers were in control of this market as sellers were pushing prices down here, right? We had a very strong sell-off from the highs here. We saw price get pushed down, but ultimately we formed kind of a double bottom here, right? We found buyer support there. We also found it again there. So the question is, will we see some sort of rally here on the euro? I don't think it's out of the question that if we do start to see a rally, you can check out some of these interesting zones that we've recently left, such as this structure point here, and we also have this zone here. So going forward, we may see price want to head up to test kind of this range or zone that we recently left, right? We have this trend line structure here as well as this trend line structure here as potential targets or potential levels if you do find yourself looking for some sort of buy trade. The next one we're going to look at is pound dollar. Let's take a look at this one today, guys, because what's interesting about pound dollar is, again, in the overall context, the longer term trend has been very, very structurally down, right? Lots of sell pressure here on the pound. However, more recently, we have seen a bounce on the pound, and we are seeing an interesting little market environment here where we actually see prices chopping back and forth. Now, if I get my shapes out here, what we'll see here, we'll go ahead and move this one to the bottom, and we'll also put one along the top. You can see that we are in a sideways trading range right now. It's kind of a large one as price has been kind of ugly. It's been back and forth and choppy, but you can see if I make this pink, we have had sellers reacting to this kind of area up to the top area here, right? Sellers stepping in right around this area as well as this area, and now even these two areas, we're finding seller pressure right in this top of the range. Now on the bottom of the range, there's a similar story. We have been finding buyers along the way, but I do want to point out one thing interesting here with the pound, and that is if I draw this trend line here, check this out, guys. This structure is holding pretty nicely for buyers. You can see right here, if I get my sketch pad out, take a look at how we actually had a beautiful little pin bar right here, right? So as sellers were pushing this price down off of this structure high, right? We had this zone come into play. Sellers pushed price down, but look at how buyers reacted, not necessarily just to this level, right? We did get that level in play here, but we also saw just a bullish pin bar in this general vicinity. Buyers pushing this price up as it touched this multi kind of structured trend line. So going to be interesting here, guys, as price does seem like it wants to come back to potentially test that trend line again here on GBPUSD. Will we find a bounce and will we continue to go back up to at least test that recent structure high? Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, guys, which is going to be USDJPY this morning. Taking a look at the structure that we have in this market, I think is very, very interesting. If I draw this Fibonacci retracement, take a look at where this 38.2% level retraces to. You can see that this area here, right, this structure zone right there, has been holding as a sell pressure zone, right? Multiple times, 1, 2, 3, and even 4 now. Will we see kind of a prolonged continued push to the downside after this, or are we going to come back to test that level again and again? We'll have to see. Right now, it looks like we want to be in a trading range, right? You can see even this structure point right here actually acting as a strong level of buyer support. So if I kind of highlight this in green, you can see that we have had a multi kind of bottom on this zone here, right? Buyers stepping in here and sellers failing to push price lower. Now, on this particular case, you can see we did get a fake out to the low side before ultimately rallying strong above. Sometimes that's going to happen. Technical analysis is never perfect, but in this particular case, you can see that the bottom of this range has been pretty clearly defined, and we have a very strong top to this range on the seller side. So going forward, let's take a look at Brent crude, which is finding buyer support. As we had talked about, we said that there's a good chance that we see a continuation to the long side on Brent crude. Now, if I look at the daily chart, we are coming into contact, however, with a longer term sell pressure resistance point. The question will be, what will price do if we can get up to that point? So I think that there's a good chance here, guys, that we will want to potentially come up and test this structure. So I'm still bullish on oil. Now, I could be wrong. Of course, there's no such thing as being perfect in the markets, right? However, I think that we may see a continued push to the upside on oil, and at least to come to test this trend line here sometime in the near future. Now, whether it be a day or a week, we'll have to see, but I think price does potentially want to try and break through this structure point that we do see here to ultimately come up and test that structure of resistance in the form of this trend line that we are seeing playing out on Brent crude. WTI crude is our next one, which is going to be a very similar structure, but check this out, guys. You can take a look right here and notice that price is currently breaking out of that trend line, right? We are seeing a lot of bullishness on WTI crude as buyers are stepping up and pushing price through this wedge formation, also this negative trend line. This is huge for oil because this could kind of start the next wave of a bigger trend, right? So multiple tops, right? We saw sellers hanging out along the tops, but then recently, what you can see, we broke that structure and now are closing above that level for a potential continuation on WTI crude. This overall has been beaten down, so we may see a continued effort to push price higher. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next one, which is the very popular gold. XAU USD is entering a sideways trading range, which is very, very interesting to watch. You can see right here, this is kind of our recent low. You can see price did kind of roll over the tops. And here's what I wanted to point out to you guys. It's not the prettiest, but I think we may be having ourselves an inverted head and shoulders, or head and shoulders pattern, right? Not inverted, because this is actually the right way, right? Here is our potential shoulder, left shoulder. Here's our head, and here's our potential right shoulder. Now, this might look like a crooked person because it's not necessarily perfect. You can see here, right? We had kind of our left shoulder potential. Here's our head, and here's our right shoulder. The shoulders aren't perfectly lined up, but this guy's kind of slanted like this, right? So we do see the potential for an inverted head and shoulders, or sorry, an inverted, or in head and shoulders pattern. I keep getting my inverted messed up. Head and shoulders pattern here on gold might lead us to see some sort of continued pressure to the downside, right? So there's our left shoulder, our head, and our right shoulder to potentially form a break to the low side. Now the question will be, will we be able to break through this structure low that we have been printing on XAUUSD? We will be watching that to see. If we can break through that, a retest entry might be a beautiful way to trade the starting downtrend that we are seeing on gold. Now these lower highs are also forming kind of a trend to the downside right now. We will see if that trend can hold and if price can continue lower. Next up is USD Canadian, which is in a beautiful channel right now. I wanted to point out what we do see from the technical perspective on USD Canadian. You can see right here, we do kind of have a channel formation going on with this market, right? We did get a fake out to the top side, but ultimately price failed and came back into kind of normal price rejection, right? And we did see a continued effort on this channel. Now, if price can come down to the bottom of this channel, I know I didn't draw it perfectly. You can see if price comes down into the bottom of this channel, we may see buyer support continue to push this price higher. Now, we do have a recent high that is going to be needed to break in order for this pattern to continue, which is going to be the light pink zone that I'm highlighting now. You can see that this level is a barrier for potential sellers to hold. We'll see if buyers can break through that. If we do see it, we might see a breakout trade where trades continue or price continues to head back up to the top of the channel. USD Swiss is going to be our next one, guys, which is kind of pulling back here off of the kind of big longer term pullback that we are seeing. I think we should watch potentially to see what happens if price can get up into the 618 level. We did see a rejection off the 50% level, but ultimately finding some sort of buyer bounce recently. So we'll see what goes forward on USD Swiss. Finally, GBPJPY, guys, is finding buyer support, and I think may be interesting to watch. You can see if we put in this trend line, we are seeing kind of a trend line formation happen here, but I want to also point out that we also have kind of a wedge formation here as sellers on the top and buyers on the bottom push price into a consolidated effort. Now we'll see, this is where we may see the opportunity for some sort of breakout trade. For example, if we break to the low side, we could see a breakout through that structure, a retest of that level, and a continuation to the downside, forming a nice little flag pattern here to the downside. Now, similarly on the top, we may see a break to the upside, a breakout, a pullback, and a continuation. So both of these might be good opportunities to look for retest entries if you do like the trade and it stands up to your criteria. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's market update. We'll see you next time.